We're going to call this meeting of the Board of Directors of the DCTA regular meeting to order. We do have a quorum. It is December 10th, 10 a.m. First up on the agenda is our invocation. And Mr. Smith, would you mind?
Please join me in prayer. Thank the Lord for this day, the opportunity to serve and glorify you, to benefit the people of Denton County. Pray for wisdom and discernment for the men and women around this table. Thank you for the leadership of Paul and his team, and just for the great progress this past year, and help us to be expectant on continued success in 2026. Thank you again for the opportunity we have to serve. Thank you for your love for us. In your son's name, amen.
Amen. Director Rimmer, would you mind leading us in the pledges?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas pledge.
On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Mr. Christina, do we have any introductions for today?
Yes, sir. Mr. Vice Chair, we were joined by Councilmember Rhonda Hurst from Highland Village, so we welcome her to the proceedings, and that is all.
Welcome, council member. Glad to have you here. And then I do have one comment card for public comment. Liam, and I never get the last name right. I'm sorry, Liam. It's Gom Wakefield.
Gom Wakefield, you got it.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Push to talk right into it, right?
You got it.
Hello, my name is Liam Gom Wakefield. I'm just out here today just for several things, like several ideas. And turns out I come out at a somewhat decent timing on this because I saw that you're doing your landscaping thing, but so it's a somewhat similar concept. I know that y'all are planning to do like a redoing of the bus shelters, and I know standardization makes a lot of sense, especially without doing it. But an idea is something where DCTA could be a leader on is green roofs, like for the bus stops, for the bus shelters themselves, because they provide several benefits. One is they provide better cool. They're a few degrees cooler underneath in the summer. And that's nice during the summer. And if it's ever like storming, like raining hard or bad, like inclement weather, it's quieter underneath when you're waiting, rather than just like the plain steel roof. It also provides greenery in places that aren't necessarily going to get much greenery in place and they're simple and cheap. They can just be like sedum, a type of succulent, and some native plants that don't grow high, so the maintenance can be like compared to the steel. But also it helps slow down stormwater. Like granted, I know it's a small thing, but when you're adding like some concrete and permeable surface, it's good to add something that helps slow down stormwater. And another thing that I'm coming out is I've already talked to customer service, but I've been using the Canva app to plan my route, and there have been several times where the Travel app hasn't told me like, hey, the bus isn't coming. 2 days. One, it was like 2 buses in a row that didn't come, and then I go walk home and I see the bus traveling. And then there was another time that I went to a city council meeting. I was at the last bus, or not a Denton City Council, a Denton P&Z meeting. I was going to catch the last bus and it didn't show up, and there was no warning for that. And then it also, when I'm taking Route 7, like to go to downtown Denton, it is
sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Then, yeah. And I guess on that one, it's like, it would be good for transit to do a notification that you're not, that it's the North Texas Express that you're taking that has the same stops that you're going to want to your destination. And honestly, this one actually sort of surprised me that it bothered me this much because it didn't bother me before, but I took took one of the A trains that didn't have wrapping around the windows, and then on my trip back, I noticed the difference because it's actually a much worse experience trying to look out of the train. So like for the new buses, I would recommend for any new wraps, not wrapping the windows. I yield the remainder of my time.
Yeah, it's Mike. We'll have staff reach out regarding the transit app. So, good. Good. Okay, thank you. All right, I have no further public comment. We'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. If there are any questions, comments, or concerns, I do not have any requests to move anything off the consent agenda at this time, so I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval of the consent agenda as presented. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passes unanimously. Regular agenda. Item 1, consider approval of monthly financial statement for September 30th, 2025. Quarterly grants report for Q4 fiscal year 2025. Consider a resolution to approve the Denton County Transportation Authority financial management policy and receive an update regarding finance operations. And we have a whole slate of presenters. So, Ms. Williams.
Good morning to the board. Yes, we do have quite a few presenting the financials this morning. So staff, excuse me, recommends the board approve the monthly financial statements for September 30th, 2025, quarterly grants report for Q4 fiscal year 2025, and resolution to approve Denton County Transportation Authority financial management policies. So I will be presenting the monthly financials as of September 30th, 2025 to end our fiscal year. I would like to begin by saying, please keep in mind, this is an unaudited version. I'll be presenting a high-level overview. However, you do have a more detailed look into the financials in your packet that you have before you, so you can feel free to follow along. So looking into the revenues, our sales tax revenue came in very close this year to our annual budget, exceeding by $234,000. The federal operating grants revenue ended the fiscal year ahead of expectation as well by $4 million. And Jane will speak shortly on more about the operating and capital grants. The passenger revenue also exceeded the budget by $52,000. I'm going to skip over contract services revenue just for a moment because I didn't want to go back and forth flipping through slides. But the contract services revenue, as well as the purchase transportation, they both came in lower than expected due to service hours adjustments, which contributed to the variance. Salary and wages and benefits, they are trending behind budget due to the timing of hires and the vacant positions we currently have. Outsourced services, overall utilization of outsourced services was conservative compared to the budget assumptions. And insurance and utilities both came in slightly under budget as well for fiscal year 25. So overall, when you're looking to compare the revenues and expenses, our revenues exceeded our expenditures by $4 million. So does anyone have any questions on the financials at the moment? Okay. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and I will have Jane come up and she'll go ahead and discuss the grants. And followed by Jane will be David.
Good morning, board. My name is Jane Flores. I'm the Senior Manager of Budget and Grants. To explain the number that Lakeisha was talking about, the differential of the $4 million, it's just a differential of how we had done the UNT revenue on it. So in the UNT revenue, I deducted that amount out. And it represented $3.8 million. If I had not done that, it would have been in. That calculation is corrected for FY26 and the budget was corrected. It just was a calculation differential where I'd taken it out. And so, for, like I said, for FY 26, we're good. And, for the overall budget for the year, we had the correct budgeted number in there. So now we're going to look at the drawdowns that we have done in the quarter 4 of FY 25. It represents $3.4 million. And they're kind of your usual suspects that we're used to seeing, but the Denton Louisville UZA is made up of 1.9 million, and that's made up of the ADA salary and benefits, and as well as bus preventive maintenance salaries and benefits, and then operating assistant, same salary and benefits. And then rail preventive maintenance, the $1 million that we were able to draw down comes from the Rio Grande contract and the car miles. And that's something that we're able to do quarter over quarter. And the bus and bus facilities, 183,000. That is made up of the Swiftly software costs that we were able to draw down. I think that was one of the first times we've done it in a while. So we were happy to be able to draw that down. And then the mobility management is mobility management salary and benefits tied back to Collin County rides, because that's our grant funded position. And then the surface transportation block grant, we were able to draw down 201,000. That's tied into our van pool expenses. And then the CMAC, the air quality, that's 74,000 is tied back into drawdowns that we could do with the Old Town RFQ support. And so that is what makes up our $3.4 million drawdowns for the quarter. In addition to these grants that you see here, we have a total of 16 open grants. We are excited to say that we were awarded one competitive grant for $2.2 million to be able to purchase buses. And so we're turning that into an application now. And then we have 3 other grants that are available to us that are just waiting, that are ones for the A train, and the other 2 are formula funds. And so we do have more grant funding coming up in the ranks here. Any questions related to grants from the slide or from the financials? I think moving on to David. Yes.
Morning, Board. Hopefully I'll be, this is one of my last appearances to you as the interim CFO. The good news is that you have an offer that's been extended and accepted by a new finance director, and he'll be on board. And I think Paul will probably speak to that some more, but I'm delighted for you. I think you have a good candidate, and I'm delighted for me as well. So exactly. Just a couple things in terms of invested assets. You can see that we were having the aggregate number is 130 million. Of that 130 million, approximately 36 million, which really reflected here exactly, is actually in individual treasury bonds. We've been positioning as much as we can now to get some higher rates locked in as we start rolling off of the Techstar. Techstar is basically the equivalent of an overnight. The overnights are going to begin going down. Right now, they've still hung in right around 4%, but they're beginning to drift downward. And depending on what happens today with the Federal Reserve, the presumption is they'll be dropping by 25 points and more later. There's a correlation, as I've mentioned before, that within 60 days or so, you'll see something similar in the overnights. And so you'll be looking at 375 to 360 pretty quickly. We were able to just roll some funding out to the end of 27, about 369. What's actually happened in the last week is that these rates have actually gone up a little bit. So that's without getting into all the rationale for that. It's good news. We're getting a little bit more than we anticipated. The bad news is that if we ever had to borrow money, our rates are a little higher than they might have been otherwise. But you're obviously in good shape with your funding level, and I think that on balance, we've met all of our requirements relative to our investment policies. There were 2 adjustments in the investment policy that after a review with Hilltop that would call to our attention. One is identifying Hilltop as a training resource for the Public Funds Investment Act training. They now provide that, and actually that's to our benefit because it's incorporated in the regular fee. And then we also had to update the broker list. So other than that, the investment policies as they stand are really no change. That's usually what you prefer. You're really not trying to change investment policies very often. You'll probably want to revisit that in a year, once you know a little bit more about what you're doing in TOD and some of these other things, and see how much your burn rate is. Jane, were you going to speak to it all to the grant matter about the additional receipts? Okay, thank you. So the only other comment I would have, and I'll turn it back, is that in regard to the year end, which I've had an opportunity to review with Keisha and also the auditors, the especially important thing this year end is that you had a system conversion mid-year. So the audit will have additional tests associated with the booking from one set of books to the other. Everything really seems to be going in a very matter-of-fact way. The system itself is performing on the financial side as a way it was anticipated and really smoother than I've seen in most. So I think the expectation would be that next year you'll begin to see some new reports roll out from the system that will be more automated as you get past year end. Keisha will be bringing your year-end audit to you sometime in the February timeframe, and that seems to be on schedule. And that concludes my remarks, unless you have a question. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. And David, you're always welcome here.
That's right. I always love to come to transit agencies.
Thank you, David. So just to piggyback off of what David has already brought to your attention. So for FY25, we do have an audit update. The interim request list was submitted to the auditors back in July. We are currently finalizing the FY25 auditors request list, and hopefully we'll get that to them before the holidays. Well, we definitely will get it to them before the holidays. The auditors field work is scheduled for 2 weeks in January. And we are scheduled to close the FY25 books on January 31st, 2026 is when we will do a hard close and everything rolls forward to fiscal year FY26. This is the last year of the current audit contract, so anticipate an RFP solicitation later this fiscal year. And with Tyler Munis ERP update, the sunset for SunGuard was October 31st, 2025. From the SunGuard system, we now have a historical archive database, which was established and is up and running, and everybody does have access and utilizing it for historical information. Currently, we're working through minor year-end updates within the Tyler Munis system, which is a coding structure with capital assets, and we're trying to make sure we have the ability to submit 1099 reporting to the IRS electronically, which I did get confirmation we have everything we need for that, so we should be good to go in January when that time comes. The 1099 scheduled training is in January with Tyler Munis, so we have dates set up for that. Our annual 1099 will be submitted to the IRS and mailed to the vendors on or before January 31st of 2026. And there are no challenges anticipated in closure of the finance ERP project no later than March 31st of 2026. We also have the financial management policy update, which David has already spoke on, and the 2 updates in your packet. I just reiterate what he mentioned was the board-approved independent investment training sources, which Texas law requires investment officers to receive training from approved independent sources and mandates annual review of broker-dealers authorized to transact public entities. And the second update to the policy was the board-approved broker-dealers list. Updating the broker-dealers list ensures DCTA only transacts with institutions that meet current financial and regulatory standards, reducing exposure to risk. Anybody have any questions on the updates we have? Okay, thank you. So with that being said, staff recommends the board approve the monthly financial statement for September 30th, 2025, quarterly grants report, Q4, fiscal year 2025, and resolution to approve the Denton County Transportation Authority financial management policies.
Board, I'll entertain a motion. Got a motion to approve as stated. Any seconds?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. All right. Next up is discuss update on DCTA landscape standards and issuance of DCTA landscape maintenance request for proposal. This is a discussion item and Austin Frith.
Morning, members of the board. Happy holidays. So I'm excited to bring you all an update on our landscape standards that we've been working on the past several months, and then give you some insight on where we're at with the RFP for the landscape maintenance contract. So our current conditions as we sit today within our stations at a couple of our facilities, the landscapes were installed most likely around 2011, whenever the A train was brought into service. They did have a partial refresh in 2014. The current condition is we do have declining tree canopy, some overgrowth with vegetation, and our irrigation has been a challenge to maintain. With that, we do have some upcoming capital initiatives that we want to align these standards with to make sure we have a resilient and sustainable landscape framework moving forward. So overall, the guiding principles, we want to ensure that we have a clear and updated design and maintenance expectation. So we make sure that we ensure safe and security within our mobility, all efforts of our mobility. We want to shift our plant palette to be really focused on native and drought adaptive plant materials and plant palettes. I want to make sure that we understand that we have extreme temperature swings in this region, and we want to make sure the plant palettes support that. We also want to make sure that these landscape designs embark safety, ADA visibility, and wayfinding. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the upcoming slides. There's an opportunity for DCTA brand identity here, with each station experience being a little bit different with the plant palette. And then we also want to make sure that we're conforming to city development standards and codes as required per the member cities. So here are just several pictures of the conditions we're seeing at some of our stations and some of our facilities. As you can see, there's some areas that really need some attention, and I think this is a result of some of the extreme weather events that we've had in the past several years. Overgrowth, I think, is an understatement on some of these pictures. I think we just need to realign ourselves, and that's the whole emphasis on creating these new standards to more align with our vision. So some of our key goals here with our planning initiatives and capital improvement alignment, natural surveillance, natural access control, territorial enforcement. This is all about guiding our riders and users to the stations and facilities to direct pedestrian flow to the main areas of the station. So when we talk about security and safety, we want to have design standards that really emphasize sight lines, really funneling people to where they need to be walking, keeping people out of the areas they shouldn't be in, and celebrating the areas they should be in. And then we also want to look at, as I mentioned, capital investments. We do have that security enhancement program that was finalizing. We do have some lighting assessments that are ongoing with the current stations. We want to make sure our landscape standards really speak to those, so we don't have instances where we have overgrown trees blocking lights or cameras. And then, of course, we have future TOD opportunities with Old Town and other stations where we would like to have something in place to make sure that we can hand this to a developer, designer, so they can integrate our standards. So as we embark on what the design standards really speak to, we had several layers of design effort going into what we call this guideline. And it started out as where do we want these areas to be focused on? And we've got two priority zones, tier 1 and tier 2, that we've organized. The tier 1 is really around high impact rider areas. So these are going to be your station platform areas. bus access areas, really main pedestrian paths getting to the station. Tier 2 are the other areas that are really perimeter parking islands, buffer areas, drainage areas, and then any utility adjacent zones. So this allowed us to really focus in on where do we put the effort and the money into when we create a new landscape design. We can subdivide them into these 2 priority zones. And again, the system-wide updates here, looking at aging plant material, overgrown plant material, improving the tree canopy coverage while maintaining those security sight lines. Looking at non-critical areas as more of a hardscape, xeriscape solution, so we can reduce maintenance cost long-term. So this is a snapshot of what the detail that goes into each of these tiered zones. So for instance, you'll have parking lot entries that have different elements with bus access, main entries, monument signage. So each one of these tiered zones has it broken down into what are the elements that we would like to see in these. These are not prescriptive. These are going to be guidelines that a landscape designer or a landscape architect would come in and utilize as a starting point. And then as we look into each tiered zone detail, each tiered zone has a plant and hardscape palette that we recommend. And these palettes are aligned with information we got from all the member cities and their codes and standards. They're primarily native drought tolerant species. We've also incorporated some areas that we would like to have some focus areas of either art or some interactive elements closer to the station platform. And then we also have opportunities for entrance pieces that really let you know that you have arrived at a station. So as we move on to once we've got this design standard developed, now we're looking at what is the maintenance strategy for this new standard. So we would like to entertain an RFP. It's really RFQ, RFP strategy to where we pre-qualify 3 to 5 landscape maintenance vendors for an IDIQ contract. Knowing that one of the first task orders or agreements that would come out of this would be a regular mowing and general maintenance agreement that would essentially maintain our facilities for grass mowing, trimming, general landscape upkeep. And then we would essentially have this pool of vendors that we could call on to provide us proposals for future landscape enhancements as needed and as required by DCTA. A few items that we want to make sure that we get with these pool of vendors: 5 years commercials landscape experience, trained cable crews, on-site supervisions needed. There is herbicide that we're asking to be provided at some of these areas, so we want to make sure that we have licensed personnel to do that. Quick response capability for any urgent or weather or event-driven needs, Clean Water Act requirements, and then ability to meet inspection standards and meet timely corrective action. So the award structure would be, we would pre-qualify 3 to 5 landscape vendors. We would choose best value award for this agreement or task order 1. And then these vendors would be executed, would be engaged in future agreements for these future landscape enhancements as needed and as budget is applicable. Timeline on the RFP, RFQ, we would like to issue this out on the street beginning of next calendar year. And then we're hopefully getting award submitted during the March board meeting for board action. That is my update on the standards. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ladies first.
So just a observation and a suggestion. Any mow and blow landscape firm could do that RFP, which are using a lot of native plants.
Right.
Which require some expertise on how to properly take care of them. So a suggestion would be to require them to have at least a person on their team that's certified by the Native Plant Society of Texas.
Okay.
To oversee the maintenance of those native plants. Because they'll just treat them like grass, and
Right.
often that's contrary to what you really want.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question about, so I understand that we're putting together some landscape standards. Is the plan that we're going to go back through the sites listed there and start to chip away at those? Or is there a plan is there a project to get all of them up to standard? Or is it just this is what we want it to be, and we're gonna have to budget it, over time?
Right. So I think the idea is we would tackle these stations by station. I think the first thing is just cleaning up what's there. And then making sure that what's there can survive. And if it can't, we would remove that. The next phase would be station by station design. How do we implement this design standard to Med Park, for instance? And what does that cost? What does that look like? That would be in a future budget item.
Okay, and so I understand that we're looking at each city's standards because every city has different landscape standards.
Right.
And that we have our recommended, I don't know when you got Louisville's, because I think we updated ours recently, so hopefully you had the most up-to-date one. But there are also other standards related to, where the landscape is located around, around the perimeter of the site, and for every so many parking spaces, you have to have so many trees or all of that. And I imagine all of that have we dug in that far to make sure that what we're putting together is not creating at least a conflict with something that's in one of the cities?
Yeah, so when this was created back in July, August timeframe, we did go into each city's standards and make sure that there was no conflict. Now that if it's been updated since then, we can revise that. This is a living document, so it's all adjustable as needed. But before we implement anything, we will make sure that it's aligned and we have incurred vision within the cities.
Just out of curiosity, was there any one or two things that between the way the different cities do it that was kind of they've got multiple directions here?
Not from what I recall. I think for the most part, the plant species differed a little bit. And I think holistically, the irrigation was something that may be a little bit different. I think from what I recall, City of Denton requires irrigation to stay in place forever. I mean, essentially until that tree or landscape element is established. Established is something that we need to understand or quantify what that means. I don't recall what the City of Louisville standard is for irrigation, but irrigation is one of those things that we need to really dive into because it's been a maintenance challenge for us. And as much as we want to be an arboretum, we run a transit agency, so we've got to make sure that the areas that need the irrigation focus, that we focus on that, and maybe the parking lot areas, we treat it differently somehow.
Okay, so that gets into my last question. Then I'll reply to that. Okay, so that gets into my last question about the irrigation, because I know our parks guys are always and it's not just during the summer, it's all year long where we having, irrigation lines breaking, and there's, it is heavy maintenance requirement. So it's a little bit of a different animal than, just a mowing contract with, picking the weeds and stuff like that. So that any irrigation maintenance would be part of the contract that we're talking about, right?
No, so I think our vision is the irrigation may be a separate contract
Okay.
because it's such a big scope. And that this one would really just be cutting the grass, weed eating, and then as needed plant material replacement and maintenance.
Okay, yeah, because I don't know, yeah, with the irrigation, it's not something you can just say, well, we're gonna schedule maintenance on the irrigation systems. It's something that is a little more involved. And is
Yes,
gonna need somebody, at least checking the system or to have some type of system in place that can detect, hey, there's a leak here or whatever, because that stuff happens all the time. And we're gonna need somebody to be able to go out there and take care of it, be notified and then get out there
right.
and.
Yeah, we've got quite a bit of acreage at our stations, so I think it justifies a separate contract that's a specialized service that we ask. A previous contract that we had everything looped in, and the maintenance of the irrigation lines was something that was overlooked, and it caused us severe pain.
Yeah, just to add, in the city of Louisville, they have I'm pretty sure they have a standard on blue-green infrastructure, especially for the downtown. So that's pretty unique. So that's something, especially when you're looking at the Old Town Station, you want to factor in. And that blue-green infrastructure is basically drainage controls. And I know you're familiar with that, but just your normal blow and go company's not going to be familiar with that.
Got it. Great feedback. Thank you.
Other comments? I love the direction we're headed. So keep doing good work. I think that's critical. It's a little thing, but it makes a big difference, especially where we live here in North Texas. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, next up, item 3, discuss local and regional updates and legislative updates. That'll be our stalwart leader here, Paul Christina.
That also says the board of directors, sir. So I'm happy to defer to you for the first cut at this.
I'm happy to give an update because there's all sorts of stuff going on. So why don't I start? Why don't I start at just a high operational level? We have the Council of Governments and the Regional Transportation Council. On the RTC, there is a subcommittee that is Transit 2.0. And Transit 2.0 is trying to figure out what policies and procedures can happen at the Council of Governments level, maybe to start emphasizing adherence or participation in transit agencies throughout the region. Understand that the RTC is made of cities that are both with and without transit. So those federal funds that come down and are provisioned by the RTC are provisioned through that entity and that board. And so you have to figure out how you can navigate that. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have in the region is that the RTC dollars can be spent on transit adjacent, and they can be spent on transportation. And they tend to get spent historically on things that become temporary. They don't, and that's I think to our detriment as DCTA, in that we can work towards getting a 2 or 3 year contract with a municipality because they've got grant funding that's paying for 100% of the project, and then when the grant funding dries up, that municipality can say, well, the feds took our money away, or there's no real skin in the game at that point to keep with transit. We've had some good conversations with multiple municipalities throughout the region. Paul and I have been kind of on a little bit of a dog and pony show, but there is definitely an appetite for it. It's just a question of how and when, and of course, everything that you've been hearing about DART and their challenges is adding some fear and uncertainty and doubt to everybody as far as transit in North Texas. We will have transit in North Texas. It will be strong. It's just there's an opportunity here to maybe reset and vision forward. So that's what's going on with 2.0. I think the outcomes of 2.0 will be to emphasize more spending towards transit related or transit associated municipalities and organizations. And hopefully that gives more of a carrot for more of North Texas communities to join. So that's 2.0. With the RTC moving upward a level, Michael Morris had just released a letter, I think it was yesterday or the day before, talking about his transition to retirement. Michael has been a huge ally of transit, and I would say that the transportation system in North Texas would not look anything like it does today without his 40+ years of leadership in that position. He will be impossible to replace. His understanding of all the levers of financing and funding are irreplaceable. I don't know how we're going to select the next person. Of course, that also falls on me because I serve on the executive board for the COG. So we'll be working through that. So any input that you guys have, please let me know. We are involved with DART currently. We have a working group of 6 major cities. 3 of those cities are Dallas, Irving, and Plano, which are highly contentious at the moment because Irving and Plano have both filed for withdrawal elections. That will happen in May, should they choose to move forward. There are 2 other cities as well that have joined that. There may be a couple more that I know they're at least talking about it. What does that mean? It means that unless they can come to some sort of agreement, those cities will hold an election, and the last day they have to withdraw or halt that election is March 18th. So they have to have a window before the May election. So what you're seeing is a real compressed timeline of these cities trying to figure out service, funding, and governing. And there are decisions that need to be made on all of those. Dallas has definitely agreed. They have fractional board seats. So it would be like one of our board members actually represented Louisville and Highland Village. They have board seats like that. Dallas, of course, has 51% of the vote in all DART. Well, not all DART decisions, but they are the majority seat holder. And there's conversations about reducing that proportionality. Many other regional transportation agencies have the big city at somewhere in the 40% range, but not an instant majority. That will have to get decided by Dallas if they're willing to step away from that, because their current formula, of course, gives them the majority. Proposed formulas give every single city that's a member a seat at the table, much like DCTA has. And the question then becomes proportionality or weighting the votes. So if you are a bigger city, your vote might be worth 1.5 to 5 votes, depending on population. So that's the proposal that's out there. That I think is probably the next big step, because I don't know if those other participating cities feel like they have the confidence to move forward if the voting power continues to stay in the format that it is today. That's a real big point of structural contention. Regardless, these conversations will create a pretty important roadmap for the municipalities to present a solution one way or another in the 90th session. And that will, then we'll see what our state legislators do when they get the opportunity to make that change. So lots going on in the region. Lots of change, lots of opportunity, I think, for DCTA to be successful. But I also think we are doing a really good job of just saying, hey, we've got to let this all settle out before we start talking to other people or having other conversations, because I don't want stuff being taken the wrong way.
Correct. And I'm glad that you went first. Thank you for laying that out. There's a lot happening. And I think as I'd like to speak to Transit 2.0 and what it means to DCTA first, this board is in a really strong position because you all adopted that new member and contracted services policy that gives you the option to provide services on an a la carte basis to current non-member cities, while being very steadfast in protecting our member city resources, which has to maintain at the top of our priority list. And so nothing about that is going to change. What you will have the opportunity to do potentially in the future is exercise that policy. How does it really work? We laid out a pretty broad set of guidelines. Now, how do we bring that into fruition with hard dollars, cents, terms, and conditions? So I commend you all on that action that you took last year. In terms of what we're doing, we're trying to be as efficient and effective as we possibly can, moving as many people as we can as cost effectively as possible. It's been our mantra for the last 3 years, and we've been delivering on that. And now we get to, as the opportunity comes up for us to tell the DCTA story, we get to illustrate how we do that. And so that's one of our focus areas. And then the third focus that I've communicated to our staff is, with all of these things going on around us, our job is to vigorously execute the work plan that has been set forth. There's nothing about what's happening in the region that changes the direction that you all have given about our priorities and objectives for 26, 27, and so on. And so those are things like the Old Town Louisville Transit-Oriented Development, the A-Train Enhancement Program, modal optimization in Denton, with potentially moving more GO Zone service to fixed route, which then frees up capacity on GO Zone to go to places where there's not fixed route, like Louisville and Highland Village. And as we're having those conversations, that is going to speak directly to what the region is trying to solve, and that is a really good position for the board to be in. So that's my comments.
Any questions? Suffice to say, there's a lot going on. All right, any other updates, any other legislative stuff from anybody? Moving on, we'll move over to informational reports. We have safety, service, and ridership reports. Background information is in your packet. If you had anybody have any questions, had a chance to review those. There's a memo update on the A-Train Enhancement Program. There's an update on the Old Town Louisville TOD project and task order number 6 with AECom. Update on task 7 with AECom. That's our intermediate service plan support. Update on the trip and proposed modification of timeline of events. There's some background on that. And again, just informational. There's an update on the contract with Remix Technologies for fixed route planning and operations software. I do have to say, I used the transit app when I was in Utah last month. Works pretty well in Utah. I've not had the opportunity to use it down here, but it's a pretty slick app. I'm glad we've put the process in place to use it. All right, so those are our informational reports. Hearing no questions or comments on those. Do we have any future agenda items or board member requests? All right. Next regular board meeting date. Thank you for your flexibility this month, by the way. January 22nd is our next update. And then finally, I have reports. Well, not finally, but finally on this page, reports of items of community interest. Do we have any community updates that we need to make the general public aware of? Paul?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I will mention one thing. This Saturday in Highland Village is Christmas at the Ranch, which is a Doubletree Ranch Park. It's from 10 to 2. There will be snow there. There will be a snow hill, reindeer, everything.
If there's snow, I'm not there.
Just a small portion of it.
Okay.
But if you want to come from Louisville or Denton, it's very convenient to stop at the Highland Village station and get off and walk across to go to the event.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
So
Other comments?
I've got a couple of updates on this that I'd like to share. A couple of slides. If you could advance one. DCTA had a really strong showing in the last quarter of this calendar year, and trying to do things that integrate us into the community more and more. And board member Rumor and I were having a conversation about what is the transit industry talking about in general, and how are we reflecting that in what we do? And one of the things the transit industry is talking about is how to engage riders on commuter rail services. And so that was the subject of a conference that I just went to recently. And a lot of those places talked about doing events and things that cause people to come out and get on the train. And we launched 2 of these things. One, in October, we obviously had a ton of engagement with the public through the City of Denton's Halloween Festival. We did some good video on that, and we saw a good social media engagement and ridership as a result. And then on a Saturday night, we had a storyteller come and give a Denton County ghost story history tour from the DDTC down to Trinity Mills and back, and sold tickets, normal fare, but then they got the opportunity to hear the stories. The train was sold out. Then just this past weekend, Santa Claus showed up and an elf, and we did the same thing except with Christmas carols and storybooks. People brought their kids. There was one contingency scenario though. A little girl requested somebody sing I want a hippopotamus for Christmas.
Nice.
And the only person that knew the words was me, so I had to step in. So we will not allow that to happen again. We will have an emergency handbook for all those things. But it was a lot of fun. And then we're stepping out to put up Christmas lights. Starting with two stations, one at Old Town, one at the downtown Denton Transit Center, just to get ourselves engaged a little bit more. And then on the next slide, just more generally, community sponsorships just in the last quarter around the holidays, around the festivals that you all are doing in all of your cities, and that includes Christmas at the Ranch. And so I just thank you all for the opportunity to engage in the community like this. It's a lot of fun for us. It helps our employees get engaged, and just wanted to share that with you, that we're getting good feedback from the community as we do these kinds of things.
I'm very appreciative of the visibility of the agency at all of our events, wherever I go within the region. I see y'all, which is awesome. And I think being able to have the stories that we can present, in this world of social media, it's easy to beat up on things. It is hard to beat up on people. And so the more that we can put stories out there that talk about the impacts that we have on people's lives, about the people who work here, I think that will drive a lot more engagement and will create ridership. All right. Any other reports? All right. Hearing none, we will go ahead and move into executive session. We have two items. Item number one, the Board of Directors will convene in a closed executive session pursuant to section 551.076(1) of the Texas Government Code, deliberation regarding security devices or security audits. And number two, the Board of Directors will convene in a closed executive session pursuant to section 551.0712 of the Texas Government Code for the purpose of seeking legal advice from legal counsel regarding a contract by and between Denton County Transportation Authority and D&D Landscape. We are in closed session, executive session. All right. Board, is there any action to be taken based on our executive session?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to recommend that the board ratify the prior expenditures totaling $43,524.23 that were made under the D&D Commercial Landscape Management Agreement and authorize payment for additional work completed in the amount of $104,154.38 for a total combined authorization of $147,678.61.
Do I have a second? I got a second. All right, I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Just double check this. As there is no further action to be taken on today's agenda, we stand adjourned. 11:26.